Hey guys, welcome to week 5. We're talking about designing for learning this week. Kind of doing a second layer now that we've gone through our first 4 modules. Really revisiting another layer on the first topic we tackled in week 1, which was just designing practice and really how to prioritize and structure practice. And so, really just kind of taking the whole philosophy of how to help players learn and just gonna kind of talk to you about how I tackle that and how I think about that. So, a lot of this stems from a mentor of mine and a really specific quote that he had that really impacted me. I guess should also get some context here is that I was homeschooled my whole life, and so I had the advantage of having a very learning focused environment where I was able to follow my curiosity and learn stuff as it came along and piqued my interest. And there's still some required core studies that went with that, but it was a lot different than I would say the majority of the population's experience with public school. From what I hear about what the school environment is like, it's a lot of teaching toward the student rather than helping the student learn. And so this quote really impacted me and kind of, I guess, aligned with my values and my experience to be a really powerful combination with how I like to do coaching. And so to become a great coach, study learning, not teaching. And so I really took that advice and ran with it. And I think it served me well. A model I like to use, I usually apply this to younger age groups, but I think it's more and more relevant to me as I think about this to all ages. And really, the simple model here is that fun goes up when you're exploring, and over time, you can do more and more exploring as long as you don't hook into boredom, right? Actually, I think about this like a golf terminology. Like you could slice over into boredom or you could hook into overwhelm. And a lot of players do, right? They'll be going along in their rec program and maybe they make a jump up, they get really excited and ignited about basketball and suddenly their rec program is boring and the coaching is not a new challenge for them. Their peers are not as skilled as they are. Everybody they throw a pass to is likely to drop it or shoot an air ball, and suddenly they're like, oh, this is boring. I don't want to play anymore, and I'm going to go do soccer or something else. Or on the other side, they hook into overwhelm, and suddenly maybe they started late and they had a teammate or a friend or a parent that said, "Hey, let's go try this next level advanced team." And suddenly they're like, "Oh gosh, these guys are out to eat me." And I'm into a full court press and a trap, and I don't even know how to dribble yet. And this is too overwhelming. And so I'm going to quit on that side. And so our challenge as coaches is to try to navigate that straight and narrow, giving them some room to zigzag and experience some challenges and experience some easier games and easier teams where they can get confidence without getting bored and without getting overwhelmed. And so that's kind of how I visualize this path. And so the question I decided to start this week with was, what does boredom look like? And I talk to a couple hundred parents every year on the phone. It's like our part of our eval process to see, where they're at and what they need and what they've experienced so far, and really establish whether it's a fit for us to move forward and do our evaluation process. And this a lot of my intel comes from just having so many of those conversations that it's almost cliche in my mind about how much this is consistent. And so when a player's bored, which some of you guys probably experience as well, is just your player's not engaged in practice, right? And sometimes that is on you as a coach. Like we talked about practice design the first week. If you're starting practice really slow and you're doing warm-ups and stretches and a lot of talking and drills with really long lines, then they're going to be lost, right? You're going to lose their engagement. They're going to be goofing off. They're going to be bored in a micro situation. But then as we go more meta, if they don't experience any problem solving in practice, like everything is scripted, right? We're going to run this set play. You must do this before you do that. And this is the only shot we're going to take. And suddenly they're bored again very quickly, right? Then the next one is they don't see anyone else at their skill level, right? It's too easy, even in games, right? It's like maybe out of the 10 rec players on your team and the 10 on the other team, there might be one on the other team that's a good matchup for them. But if that player subbed out, then it's like they have their way and like they can do whatever they want, right? And they end up being frustrated with teammates that are not as skilled or committed to playing or getting better as they are. And like I said, it's like you pass to the player with a lower skill level, even if you make the right play, if you're the best skilled player on the team, you're faced with that tough choice, right? You make the right play, you give it to the teammate who was open, and they just blow it up, right? They turn it over, they shoot an air ball, or or maybe both at the same time, you're getting double team and even triple teamed because the other team knows like, hey, you're the guy we need to stop. Like if we shut you down, we're gonna win this game pretty easily. And so, you're stuck as a player having to try to balance that where you're taking really tough shots over multiple defenders, trying to figure stuff out, or you're passing to an open teammate who's, dropping the ball. And so that's really the main symptoms I see most consistently across a player that's kind of sliced into the boredom side of our model of exploration. And, really one of our main challenges as coaches is to try to prevent that, like try to keep the players engaged. I think I talked about on week one, I think it was in relation to a question one of you guys had asked about how to keep the best players engaged. And it's really, move at the pace of the best players, which we're going to talk about more in a few minutes of, what that speed looks like. But if you can move at their pace, keep them engaged, we're going to pull it along the rest of the team. And even the lowest skill player is going to get something out of it. He's just not going to master it, this week or today's practice. Um, and what does overwhelm look like? On the other side, they don't get much playing time, and when they do, they're super stressed, right? So you can imagine a lower skilled player on a higher level competition team, they're probably going to get limited playing time, at least as they're starting out, and then because it's limited when they are in, it's like super stressful, right? It's like it's not just that the competition level might be a little bit out of their reach yet, but it's also that I have 2 minutes, and if I mess this up, I'm going to go back to the bench, and that's it for this game, right? And so the stress level just goes through the roof, and they're more likely to mess up. They're more likely to do, I guess, a lot of the other ones I have listed here. So they're going to defer to whoever's either the loudest or the most skilled on their team, right? They're gonna pass it. I call it hot potato syndrome, but it's like, get this ball out of my hands. I want the pressure off of me. You take it. Sometimes that's even a shot. It's like a spasm shot. It's like ball came to me, chuck it up, and get the ball out of my hands is better than holding it and having to make a decision under pressure. And so, a lot of times it's pretty quickly established what the totem pole hierarchy is of our skill and our team. And so it's like, give it to Johnny. He'll do something with it. The pressure's off of me, and phew, I didn't make a mistake while I got it, Johnny. So I'm good, right? Maybe I'll get another 2 minutes next game. Another thing I see a lot is they might be your most intellectual player, right? They can recite back to you probably better than some of your stud athletes. They're going to tell you all the team rules that you've ever talked about. They're going to tell you what the name of the plays are, where everybody should be in every play, and what all the positions mean, and especially their own. Like they are obsessing about making sure they have the rules right and the positioning right, everything they're supposed to know intellectually. And they're often your biggest question mark because in your mind, they really do great in practice. Like they actually might be pretty skilled. If it's structured, it's like, hey, we're playing one on one, and this is the thing to do. And you just need to score. And they're like, okay, I can keep the ball in my hands. This is the right thing to do. I'm going to take whatever shot. Maybe I can score some of the time and do pretty well. But when it gets to the chaos of the games and it's not as structured as a drill, they really tend to freeze up. And this is one of the main avatars we work with a lot. It's like sixth, seventh grader that's kind of played enough basketball, has the skill and the context of the game, but they're just not getting that translation from practice to game. And, their parents are noticing that, their coaches are noticing that, everybody's trying to give them like the encouragement, give them the self-actualization, encouragement, and confidence, like go be your best self. But they're like, I don't really know how to do this when there's chaos and pressure on me. And so it's one of the key factors that shows up with lack of confidence, or I like to really put it in the category of overwhelm, as we're talking about here. And so what we're trying to again prevent is a lot of these things by getting players to step forward at a small enough step. I think Dana had pointed out the analogy I had used week one of the or week two when we were talking about instructions. The ladder with really big rungs is kind of where everybody tends to operate. And it's like the first step is too high off the ground for the kid to even get started, versus a ladder with a lot of rungs spaced a couple inches apart that anybody can climb and take baby steps really fast. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here is that the too big a step, too big a jump in competition, or too big of jump in just expectation for a player that's still beginning. All that can be overwhelmed very quickly compared to we're going to prove to you that you know what to do, and we're going to stack this piece on that piece that you already know how to do, and connect the dots for them up until it actually makes sense when they're in a full-fledged game and they can execute and run with it and be comfortable doing so without being overwhelmed. And then we just see that you can see it physically, even their body language, everything changes when it's like this is fun exploring challenge versus this is overwhelming, or geez, this is boring, right? So it's a delicate balance. Like we're watching walking the edge of a knife a lot of the time, especially, if you have a team of let's say 10 or 12 players, you got 12 personalities that are all somewhere along that spectrum. So to get, any number of them to navigate this straight and narrow exploration path and not be either bored or overwhelmed at some point, during a practice even is a lifetime project to get good enough at coaching that you can keep them all exploring the whole time. So back to my quote, we should study learning, not teaching. I like to just contrast kind of what happens when we teach. And kind of the three main things that I see most commonly is that we assume what they should already know as a player. So let's say they're a sixth grade boy, right? We assume they know how to set a ball screen. We probably assume they know how to make a layup. We might assume they know how to pass and cut or even what that term means. And I guess in my experience, it's highly variable. Like I know some third graders that know all that. I know some eighth graders that never learned terminology or, execution of skill or basic tactics. And so that can really get us in trouble quickly, right? And I think a lot of coaches have that error. Like we jump, like all you guys might even be doing now is like we are all in on the huge big picture strategy, how we're going to run this team, the offense we're going to run, all the fun coach brain ideas that we have. And in order to jump to those higher level strategies and ideas and things we want to work on, we are very prone to assuming that they already know some of the basics. And that just gets us in trouble really quick. Like we might have this great, somewhat complex offense that we think will work with the squad we have, but three of the players don't actually know what this means or how to execute this thing we're talking about. And we're getting mad at the whole team for goofing off and messing up in practice, and we're making them run suicides if that's still a thing in sixth grade practice. But we're getting all frustrated when it's really just like, oh, we didn't prove that they actually knew how to do this. So we got to backtrack a little bit usually. Then we assume that there's only one way to do it, right? So we're saying, like, me as the great grand potentate coach with more basketball experience than you say that this is the only type of layup that you can make, right? There is no such thing as a goofy foot or an inside hand or a high hook or a spin move, right? It's just plain vanilla pizza pan is what we call it, push finish layup. And if you don't do it that way, then you're doing it the wrong way and you're wrong. And don't do that. And that'll lose players faster than anything. Like if you got a skilled player that actually can do some any hand, any foot, any time finishes, as I like to call it, then if you're squeezing them down to only do vanilla pizza pan finishes, they're going to get bored, right? And then the other thing we assume, especially beginners, is they don't get it today, they never will, right? Coaches quickly write off players. I'll hear terrible stories of a fifth grader that got told he should quit basketball because he's not good at it. And he never will be, right? And it's just coach and frustration in my mind that would say that because the player's just not getting it the way they want them to get it in the big ladder rung that they're giving it to them in. And they assume, they're just not going to ever do that. They're never going to get it. And so if we assume those three things, we get into trouble really quickly, right? And the outcomes we see from that. Um, we're really trying to force a square peg in a round hole often, right? We're not adapting to the player variety, the variety of experience they might have. Like some kids have played 6 years of basketball by sixth grade. Like they started in kindergarten competitively and like they're just ballers and they do it all the time. Some players have never walked and dribbled a basketball at the same time in sixth grade and they're starting from scratch. And so accounting for those variations in just experience is a huge one. And then there's physical attributes. Like we have a kid right now that's an absolute stud in seventh grade and just incredible athlete, and he's working on refining the skills. But him compared to the average seventh grader who's like gangly, maybe just had a growth spurt, it's not coordinated at all, is like trying to figure out how far the ground is away when he's trying to dribble because he just grew 6 inches, right? There's a huge variety there. And then learning style, right? And so I'll talk more about it's called kinesthetic, just like the physical activity of doing and learning by doing versus visual or auditory, learning by hearing. But that can have a huge variation. Like there's a lot of auditory processing deficits in kids where they can't really take verbal instructions and get much of anything out of it. And so I think it's more of the population than we would like to assume, but most people need physical execution. They learn by doing. Um, and then again, we tend to give up on them if they don't conform, right? So back to the previous one, there's only one way to do it, right? And if they don't get it today, they never will. And so we're going to give up on them if they don't conform or adapt. They're just not going to, they don't get it, right? This is like nine guys got it, the 10th guy didn't, and we're like frustrated that he didn't get it, and we're moving on. And what I put on the afterthought here is we're going to triage for the skilled players that can deliver. And this is where majority of coaches end up, right? Even if they have the best of intentions, this is a rec team. We're going to get equal playing time. When it comes down to it, it's like this kid does not understand what we're trying to do. And if I put him in the game right now, we're going to lose. And so his playing time just went down, and I'm going to put these five guys in. And probably when we run practice, these five guys are going to get an extra couple of reps every time because they get it and they can do what I want. And they make me feel better about practice because they executed something correctly, by the end of the drill we did. But if we can keep those players that didn't get it the first day and trust that they will get it by maybe the end of the season, then we're pulling everybody forward and getting more progress, getting a broader pyramid in our whole program potentially by getting more kids to keep taking the next step forward, keep coming back next year. And again, avoiding telling that fifth grader, like, you should quit basketball now because you're not good at it and never will be. Like, I feel like that is a really big shame and should never be told to a child. But also, you as a coach, like, just kind of taking the responsibility for that is like, I've got 10 or 12 different personalities, abilities, and experience levels, and I got to find a way for each of them to take a small step forward for them and not either have too high of a standard just because that's where I expect their age group to be, or to give up on them because they're not there yet. And then the last outcome here is that players just quit before they get good enough to have fun, right? So this is really where my heart's at lately. Like the stats show across all sports right now is 70% of kids quit before they finish eighth grade. And that's a huge shame to me. I like to play basketball still, and I want everybody to play for a lifetime. Play rec basketball, get to a level where they can walk on any court anywhere in the world and play basketball and enjoy it. I think is a huge value. And so trying to get them over that hump to where they are good enough to have fun and burn out from trying really hard. And I see a lot of players working really hard based on very poor advice from coaches, means that they're putting out all of their effort, pouring their heart into the wrong things that didn't get them results, and therefore they burn out before they get results that would actually move them forward over that hump and say, this is fun now because I gained some skill. And I think a burnout is just another type of overwhelm, right? It's like, okay, I worked for the last 3 years through middle school and I got cut from my freshman team in high school. And everybody's telling me now I need to double down and like do twice as much work as I have already been just to try again next year to make this team. And you know what? I got a life, I got other things I enjoy doing, and I'm out. I'm gonna throw in the towel because that level of effort without seeing results is just too much for me, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm burnt out. And I think a lot of that comes from just, again, poor advice on how they should be working and what they should be working on. Kind of the stuff we've covered already with decision making and the translation of skills from decisions to game situations so that all those dots are connected and the player actually understands how to apply and translate a skill to a game versus being told to, my favorite rhyme I've made is stare at the wall and pound the ball in the garage until you hate your life, right? And that's where a lot of advice is given to players. Is like that's the work you got to do. And again, you got cut in freshman year, you got to do more of that because you got cut in order to make a comeback. And it's really just the wrong kind of work, right? They should do a lot of work, but if it's not pointing in the right direction, they're doing a lot of effort without a lot of results. And that's what leads to the quitting and the burnout, in my opinion. All right. So switching gears to the positive side of this, what do we see when we help them learn? First off, we assume nothing, right? At the top of the other one, I had put, we assume A, B, C. Like we assume that they know certain things. And so we assume nothing is really the starting point of learning. Is like, I'm going to put you through an evaluation and assume you have never heard of your left foot. You don't know what your right hand is, and you never thought about the fact that they could go together when you dribble in order to set up a layup, right? And really just help them prove what they know and prove what they can do. And then basically I just have it like a checklist approach. Is like I want to check off these 28 things that you can do. And for a beginner, we might get through one today because you don't know how to do that one. And we need to solve it and troubleshoot it, right? Maybe we'll get through six in like a half hour, an hour with a beginner. But for advanced players, it's like we do the same checklist. We certify every step of the knowledge tree that we want them to have and the skill tree that we want them to have. But it's pretty obvious on their first rep when they know how to do it and they've done it before and they're confident in it. That is like, check, right? You know how to do that. Okay. Right hand layup, check. Left hand layup, check. Reverse layup, check. Inverted reverse layup, check. Great. Hook finish layup, check. Great. You're pretty advanced. Let's go shooting. Okay. Catch and shoot, 3-point shot. Right hand dribble pull up shot. Left hand dribble pull up. Floater right hand. Floater left hand. Okay. Check, check, check. And, now we're like getting down to the bottom of our list in a few minutes. And again, just checking off what they know really fast, but doing the same list for everyone, never assuming that they know everything we want them or expect them to know based on their age or grade level. And I think where this is probably more highlighted is actually not on the individual technical skills like I just listed, but more on the off-ball movement ideas where it's like, hey, do you know how to read a back cut? Do you know how to drive and kick and move off the ball with that? Do you know how to pass and cut effectively? Do you know how to pass to the post? Do you know how to cut off the post? Right? We can go through a checklist of those and try to figure out and certify again where their knowledge is. And depending on what age group you're working with, like it might be a pretty short list. It's like pass and cut. No, nobody's ever heard of that. Never done it. Okay, we're gonna work on pass and cut tonight, right? That's the thing. Like we need to master that skill and certify that you guys know how to do that before we start building other pieces on top of that. That was a big one. A lot packed into my first bullet point. The second one I put is discover as much as you can about them, right? And so typically in the contrast in the teaching mode, it's about what we know that we're giving to them, regardless of what their context or experience or if they have a place to put what we're telling them in their realm of experience. So if you can discover as much as you can about them, which is really where we've landed and had a lot of success, is like, okay, take me back. I'll just jump on a call with a parent and say, hey, tell me the story of their basketball journey. Hey, they started in kindergarten, they played rec, then they went to travel in third grade, then they tried AAU last year in fifth grade, and now they're at their school team for sixth grade. Great. Now I have a picture of where they are. And then when I'm with the player, I'll ask them, hey, what's your best skill right now? Okay, shooting. Cool. What's your weakest skill? Ball handling. Okay, great. That's more information about what they think of themselves and where they're at, and just helps me guide them, right? And then I might say, like, hey, Bobby, you're the shooter. I want you to demonstrate this next drill we're going to do because we're going to drive, kick, and shoot a 3 point in the corner. And, we're like, embracing and reinforcing the fact that he told us shooting was a strength. And, he might feel all pressure on that, like, oh, I gotta hit a shot now. I said I was a shooter. But, when he does hit a shot, then it's like another big boost in confidence. Um, Next is we address the kinesthetic, auditory, and visual learners. And a lot of people say they're a visual learner. I think very rarely people will claim that they're an auditory learner, but almost everybody will say they are a kinesthetic learner. They won't usually use that term. That's a more sciencey term I pulled out here, but learn by doing is all that means, right? Is like physically doing the skill and walking it through is how most people learn. And I really think about this more and more as like, I guess the 80-20 rule. I throw a lot of people in that bucket, but it seems to apply to a lot of things as well. I would say about 20% of people are visual learners where they can watch somebody do a skill and then they can go do it, right? And I may be one of those people. I think with a lot of training, I'll still have to do it in order to describe it better to players and demonstrate it. But, I can watch an NBA player do some new crazy combo move and I can pretty easily go copy that. And I think that's a part of my success as coaching. Like a lot of us are as coaches, I think, in that category, whether that helped us succeed as players or not, like we can see something and we can go implement it. But in my experience with players, and especially this age group of like fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, about 80% of them are not visual learners, which means they physically have to walk through each step of the thing that you're trying to do before they're going to get it. And again, just a variety of learners. Some of them might be walk through one time slow motion and then they can do it full speed. Some people might be walk through three times and then do it medium and then do it 75% speed and then do it full speed. Some people might be walk through it 10 times a day, walk through it 10 times next week, walk through it five more times the following week, and then they'll get it and they can walk it through and then progress with speed. So there's a wide variety there again, but making sure you're addressing all those. Like, I try to have a lot of auditory speech about what we're doing. I try to provide video examples when I'm working with players about what we're doing. And then I give them a lot of repetitions of the doing part because I'm a firm believer that most, if not all, people learn best by doing. And a lot of that's, I think, well, overshadowed, or I guess underemphasized is probably a better way to say it. Underemphasized in coaching. It's like we speak words in practice and we expect them to go do stuff, right? Or for a visual, we draw stuff on a marker board in a game that they've never seen before. And we're like, go run that play to win the game right now. It really doesn't happen that way, right? Like you should probably have one out of bounds play if you're working with anything below sixth grade and just practice the doing of that play a lot until they can execute it. And don't complicate it and don't draw new stuff on your marker board because four out of five of the guys going on the floor are not visual learners and only one kid got it. And if he's not the one in charge of throwing the pass or taking the shot, then we probably are blowing up that play. Um, and another aspect here that I really have come to embrace is help them learn by whatever means necessary, right? And it's kind of back to the size of our ladder rungs idea again, is really like break it down into whatever size pieces are digestible for them and help them take one ladder rung step forward today and keep them on that progression. And this is kind of the contrast to writing them off or triaging to the best players because the worst player didn't get it, we're trying to go down to wherever they are and find what the next step is, and by whatever means necessary. So it might be, hey, stay 10 minutes after practice. We're going to walk through this footwork together. Make sure you got it. We're going to do step by step slow motion with the whole team to make sure we get it. Really taking that learning is the outcome we want. And so by whatever means necessary, like anything under the sun that I can come up with that helps them learn is on the table. I will do it. And the last part I like to point out is what I've come to call the 10% rule, which is really just a framework for me to try to remember that if I have perfect knowledge, which is debatable, but let's say compared to my players, I have 100% knowledge. It's really, really important that I don't try to give them even 50% of my knowledge. They need the 10% that is relevant to them to take their next step forward. And if we're trying to help them learn, we don't need to teach this other 90% that may or not be relevant to the context of what they're trying to do. If we can boil it down with our focus funnel model of instructions, like we talked about week 2, and just give them that 10%. It's like, this is a dribble handoff. This is how it works. This is what you do. Do it. Do it again. Do it again. Yes, yes, yes. They got that 10%. Then we can add another 10% maybe tomorrow or next week. But trying to give them a whole, even 50% of what I know about this dribble handoff scenario is just too much. And we lose players into that boredom really quickly, or we'll lose them into the overwhelm, depending on how they absorb information. Either way can go with that. But trying to remember that you only need to give them 10%. They are only trying to take this one step. They don't need to know everything under the sun trivia about this one thing that you're excited about. They just need their next 10% to step forward. And then contrasting outcomes again. When we help them learn, we see the best players are engaged in learning, right? They're leaning forward for the next challenge. They're really in that exploration mode. Everyone's confidence is concrete. Some people have more confidence because they have more things they're capable of. Some people have less confidence, less stack of confidence, but they're still confident in the things that they do have, right? So, like, we have a very skilled player with 27 things on his list that he's checked off as capable of doing, and he's going to be more confident in more things, but he has certified to us and to himself that he's capable of doing those things. We want to have that same experience for the lowest skilled player with 3 things he can do, but he's very certain that he has proved that he can do those and do them well and do them in a game situation, ideally, so that that concrete confidence really shows up when we get to games. Um, and so I put it as proven that they know what and how to do everything we are asking of them. So back to the start, I talked about when we're teaching, we assume they know certain things. This is part of not assuming that. Like, we have walked them through proving every single thing that we are asking for them to do. We've proved that they already know how to do it, and therefore they should feel pretty confident in executing that. Low skilled players have a next step for them, right? They start to feel like they're making progress, and they're no longer hooking into the overwhelm by comparing themselves to their peers, right? It's like Johnny compared to Bobby might be a wild difference on a rec team, especially. And if Johnny is always comparing himself to Bobby, he's gonna feel like he's pretty crappy at basketball and might quit, and he's gonna be overwhelmed by that. But if you can boil it down to, like, hey, Johnny, we're just trying to get you to walk and dribble with your left hand this week, right? And he's like, hey, coach, I walked and dribbled with my left hand on the whole court today. And you're like, way to go. Like, that's all we need is one step forward for them that's relevant to where they were before. And that just ties back to the discovery process of learning more about them so you can know exactly where that threshold is. Like, what is an exciting forward progress step for them, even if normally we would say, geez, you should have known that 3 years ago, right? It doesn't matter if we're trying to help them learn. All right, maximize repetitions of the doing, right? So if we are helping them learn, practice should be very little talking, right? It's like, quick intro. This is what we're working on tonight, or this is the next drill we're going to run. This is why, this is what it's for. This is how it sets up. Here's a demo. And then rep repetitions, maybe with defense, maybe without defense. You can oscillate back and forth with that. We talked about in practice design with the actual structure of drills. And then the last point on here is 90% will get it by the end of the season, right? And so again, contrasting this with teaching where we feel like if they don't get it today, they're never going to get this, right? And it's taken me a while to let go of that. It's like, well, really, if we're moving at the pace of the best player, Johnny here, the beginner, is maybe going to get 3 reps of this, and it might take 25 reps for him to get it. So therefore, 8 practices from now, it might click for him, and he's going to get it. We don't really know where that lies, but if we let go of it's today or die, right, for everybody, we not only prevent us from slowing down practice, trying to drag that lowest skilled player along to get something accomplished and boring the rest of the team who has already got it, but we also just take the pressure off of them and really take more of a learning approach. Or it's like, we're in here for the long game. It's like by the end of the season, if you can finish the left-hand layup, like we're going to count that as a great win, because right now nobody can make it at a left-hand layup in 5th grade, whatever our team was. So trusting the long game approach that they will get it if you give them a long enough time horizon toward the end of the season. All right, so now to the core 4 points I wanted to make about designing an environment for learning. So using that exploration model, we're trying to keep them in that upward to the right exploration, not slicing into boredom or hooking into overwhelm, trying to keep them on track. And so one of the best things you can do is to start with a problem. And this would be an example of where I would use some time for talking. 5 minutes of practice could be spent in a problem solving kind of discussion. If you let them do some of the thinking to solve a problem with you, even if you already know what the answer should be in your mind, they're going to remember what they say way more than what you say. And I think that's a really powerful concept. Like you might have a couple players maybe even disagree on, whatever this topic is we're talking about. Like maybe it's which way should we move when our teammate drives right? And one player might say left, and one might say cut to basket, and one might say move to right. And they gotta hash it out and talk about it. And you can have some input on that. But when they get to the conclusion, and maybe you help guide the discussion and get them to demonstrate how that actually plays out as they're thinking, then suddenly they all proved it to themselves, and they're going to remember that way better than you just said drive right, move right, which I'm probably guilty of. I say that all the time. But you get players to experience the solution to the problem that was brought up, then that's way more memorable. It sticks in their mind. And then the other aspect of this is when you do come up with a problem and you set them on solving it. Maybe it's more just constraints in a drill, right? You're not verbally discussing a problem. You're saying, hey, this is one ball handler against 2 defenders, like a trap. And I want you to try to escape 2 defenders and go score. And you're like, you could say, hey, you could retreat, dribble, and break over the top. You could hesitate and maybe split between, or, you could try to get the outside on the sideline of this guy. But that'd be like giving them recipes, like giving them their solution, right? And if you just let them loose with that constraint that they got to solve that problem of getting past 2 defenders by handling the ball, they'll solve it in all kinds of crazy ways that you would have never thought of, right? And they may come up with their favorite solution, is what I put on here. And you just need to be okay if it's not also your favorite. Like maybe you see it as like hesitate and split. The trap is the best ball handler move to do because it's the most straightforward to get to the basket. But they might come up with some crazy combo dribble of between the legs and wrap behind the back and split between. Or they pick it up and do like a high pickup over the defender's hands and get through to the rim after they picked up their dribble. Like they'll create all kinds of possibilities if you can just leave them with a problem and be okay with however they solve it. And maybe they come up with a crazy solution that's like a 10% probability kind of shot selection that they would never make, more than 1 out of 10 in a game. But they did their own thing and they made it, then they're pretty happy about it. If you can embrace that and let them keep trying it, maybe remind them that's not the only option. If they keep going back to that, like, what else do you got? And see what else they can create. But suddenly they're solving problems in multiple different ways, and their engagement in that process just goes skyrocketing. All right, next up is encourage experimentation. I guess I already got ahead of my notes here with this, but if you just say, like I just talked about, the whole scenario I just went through, if you just say, I love the creativity when they make a crazy move that works, even if it is a 10% probability, you don't have to show them the known solutions. You can wait for that until they like run out of ideas, right? And then, again, based on the quality or the skill of your player, that could be really quick. It's like they only know how to do this right hand vanilla layup. And so if a defender's there and keeps blocking it, they're like, I got blocked, I got blocked, I got blocked. And you're like, hey, what else could we do? And they're like, I don't know. And then you're like, okay, how about a Euro step and get a different angle and finish, right? Or it's a crossover to get to the other side of the rim. You might have to show them some solutions. But I think about it like a sandbox, right? Where if you don't draw borders on the sandbox, they can keep expanding that and like try all kinds of stuff that you might not even have thought of for that particular situation or that drill you're running. But try to hold yourself back, restrain yourself from drawing the lines and telling them the solutions before they've like really run out of ideas and they're like looking at you like, hey, what do you got for me? Because I'm stuck. I don't know how to beat this guy that just blocked my stuff 4 times in a row. Can be really powerful. Just again, encouraging that experimentation and really pointing out when you love the creativity, they created something new that you never thought of. This one's really powerful. This really ties back into the tag teach approach we talked about in week 2. Just saying yes to the correct execution of a skill is kind of where we left off in week 2. But you can also say yes to the best quality attempt and kind of raise that bar really subtly, right? So it's like we want to finish left-handed. And one time they do something really wild and off balance and clearly not a good quality shot, but it goes in. And you say yes to it that first time. But then, they try that 3 more times and you don't say yes, even though they're doing what you wanted. And then they do a lot better quality mechanical shot and make it, and then you say yes to that one, and then it's like the bar has been raised. You don't say anything, you don't say yes to anything else unless it's that same quality. You can apply that to all kinds of different things, but the term that's usually used in that in behavior science is called shaping, where kind of what I've evolved to with my whole approach to shooting, we've talked about a little bit with some coach questions. But if you take what already working and just reward a small movement in the direction of the ideal, then pretty quickly they evolve and get shaped to a lot better shot quality, for instance, right? So if you just use your rewards, your knobs and dials, your incentives, just focus on like the top 20% quality attempts, then you're raising that bar all the time. So I put example here, if you're playing one-on-one, scoring off the dribble, right? A lot of players will tend to either shoot mid-range if they can't get past the defender, or they'll fade away, or they'll stop and do like 3 pivots in the paint before they, throw up a finish around their defender. And so we got a couple guys in high school right now that are kind of in that zone. They're tall, so they can get a fadeaway or they can get a back down and make it happen at the rim. But our challenge is like only downhill finishes count. So you got to be moving toward the basket, Euro step or crossover, and be finishing without pivoting or fading away. And then you can change that. I put the level up with the incentive there is like that's worth 5 and all others are worth 1. Or for a lower age team it might be, hey, left hand layups are worth 5. Maybe even attempted left hand layups are worth 5 because nobody willing to attempt it right now. We're only going to our right, and then everything else is worth 1. And suddenly there's the one kid that's like, I'm going to game the system, I'm going to go get that 5 points and get 15 points out of missing my left hand layup attempt. But that's what we were trying to get them to do. They feel like they're gaming our system. We're like, you just took left hand layups that you would never try otherwise. And just shaping that can be really powerful. So kind of next layer on the tag teach approach again is, using that to shape them subtly toward a better and better quality shot or better quality decision. Like you could really apply that universally to any kind of situation where you have a clear outcome and instruction and or an incentive, right? So like yes is kind of the simplest, the default. Like they do it, you say yes. But if you're playing a competitive game, then I like playing with the score system, like incentivizing whatever that outcome is. And again, raising the bar. You don't really have to tell them like, hey, I'm now raising the bar and it has to be this. It's just like you didn't say yes or you didn't count their 5 points unless they make that left hand layup now. All right. Last one I put on here is clarify what you want. So again, connecting back to week two, simplifying instructions. Instead of saying no to what you don't want, clarify what you do want and say, try again. Right. And then you can give out a huge bounty, kind of what I just talked about. Give that incentive. You can make it wildly bigger based on how unwilling they are to do it normally. Right. And so, like, the ultimate example would be like if you attempt a left hand layup, it's worth 11 points and we're playing to 11. Right. So it's like one try of this, you're going to win the game. So, like, chuck it up there. And suddenly everybody's trying left hand layups. Right. And they're going to make it happen. But give the bounty for the outcome you want. Right. And so I guess that's still a good example of like make a left hand layup. Maybe we do that in a team scenario instead of one on one, but we're playing 3-on-3 and we need a left hand layup to win, right? And then it's worth 11 points. So it's like a winning shot. You need one of them and you win. And then celebrate the I call it the surprise and delight factor when they achieve it in unexpected ways, right? It's like maybe you thought based on that clarity of outcome, you wanted a left hand layup made. Maybe you thought somebody was going to drive it to get that layup, but suddenly here they come, dribble at handoff, back cut, and somebody scores a left hand layup on a back cut, and like I'd be like jumping up and down, like maybe even fall down, like hands on my face, like I'm crying, like I just won the NBA championship kind of reaction when they do something like that, because that's like the best outcome I can have when they're really learning and we're really creating that environment and that engagement and that problem solving mentality. They'll come up with stuff like that that'll just I guess actually make you tear up because it's so cool to see. All right, summary: study learning and not teaching. Keep your players exploring, trying to balance between boredom and overwhelm, and hopefully that keep them playing for a lifetime. And then create the environment where exploring is okay, creative solutions are encouraged, right? And problem solving is a standard part of every practice. I think in my experience, you'll get more engagement, more kids looking forward to practice than ever before if you continuously give them problems to solve and try to restrain yourself from stepping in with solutions too soon. Let them explore and solve it every way they know how before you step in. And ideally, don't step in unless they ask you to, because then they are requesting coaching from you, and you've got a powerful dynamic that can really get a lot of progress really quickly. All right, next week, what's coming up? We're going to talk about our points per shot value. And we touched on this briefly with the type of possession discussion out of the defensive module, week 4. And so really going to connect the dots of that and go a lot deeper on really how the math works and how you can use this. So we can talk about evaluating your whole team on your offense and your defense efficiency. You can talk about your opponent and evaluating their offensive efficiency, individual players and individual plays. And I think a bonus that comes out of this is you can really create a numbers math to back up your decisions on who gets playing time. It's like, yeah, you know, Bobby, you're really skilled and you did score 20 points, but it actually took you 44 shots to get those 20 points and we lost the game. And, meanwhile, Jimmy over here took 10 shots and got 10 points out of those 10 shots. And so he's moving up this week and he's taking your spot, Bobby, because we're trying to get our team making better decisions and taking better shot selection, which we'll also talk about during this module, and get your efficiency of your team operating based on math that's kind of irrefutable. And it's my favorite way to establish a system for playing time compared to, the eyeball test or your feeling of the week that's, you know, usually based on a pretty good gut instinct. But if anybody questions it, it's like, well, I felt like it. It's hard to justify our choices with playing time that really do have a big impact on our players. And of course, parents are always highlighting the discrepancies in playing time between what they want and what their players getting. So being able to point to math is like, hey, he needs to do this, this, and this, and get his efficiency up to at least zero point 0.8 points per shot if he's going to have a starting role on our team. And that's our standard we set. So looking forward to that discussion with you guys. Thanks for your patience as I was traveling this week. And hopefully you get some good ideas out of this recording. Feel free to hit me up by text or email if you got questions. We can keep the discussion going in between now and our session next Thursday.